Have you ever read a book where, by the third story, you start looking around suspiciously, wondering if every man in the world suddenly became the villain? Opening Spaces. Contemporary African women's writing is exactly that kind of book, until it isn't. It shocks, it burns, then gently surprises you with a soft landing. Let's dive into this fierce and fiery collection edited by the late, great Yvonne Vera. It opens with a charming but subtly piercing tale by Ghanaian writer Ama Ata Aidoo called The Girl Who Can. It's about a young girl named Ajoa who has a problem. Her legs. No, really. Her grandmother thinks her legs are too skinny to be useful to society.
But Ajoa has legs, Nana would insist, except that they're too thin and also too long for a woman. Kaya, listen, once in a while, but only once in a long while, somebody decides. Nature, a child's spirit mother, an accident happens, and somebody gets born without arms or legs or both sets of limbs. And then let me touch wood. It is a sad business. But if any female child decides to come into this world with legs, then they might as well be legs.
Page 9. According to Nana, if you're going to be born with legs, they better be good legs. Thankfully, Ajoa gets a chance to prove what they're really worth on the athletic field. Then comes Deciduous Gazettes by Melissa Tandiwe Mayambo. The story bounces between the voice of Mrs. N-Cube and that of her equally battered friends, all victims of polygamous marriages. The emotional breaking point? When Mai Sithole comes home to yet another talk show about polygamy.
She picks up the telephone table and smashes it into the television screen. She picks up a chair and throws it into her reflection again and again until shards of glass slide to the floor in jagged geometrical shapes. Triangles, pentagons, octagons. She drags the chair into the kitchen and hurls it into the stove.
Page 34. And right there, with a chair and a broken mirror, we see the rage of a woman trapped in patriarchy's house of mirrors. Leila Aboulela's The Museum takes a different turn. Shadia, a Sudanese student in Scotland, visits a museum expecting to feel proud, only to discover colonial relics and trophies of conquest. Her Africa is missing.
This was the first time that we have really been in Africa, the real Africa of jungle inhabited only by game.
And suddenly we feel the ache of identity distortion and the quiet horror of erasure. Then there's The Red Velvet Dress by Farida Karodia, a dark jewel in this collection. Katrina comes home after 25 years in prison for killing the man who molested her, believing him to be her father. But plot twist, he wasn't. Yes, she spent a quarter-century in prison for avenging a crime committed by a man who didn't even qualify for the title father. The betrayal hits harder than the twist. In Uncle Bunty by Norma Kitson, we meet what seems like a decent man.
You could have said Uncle Bunty was the ideal husband. He was a good provider.
Page 58. But by the end, Auntie Betty has divorced him at 81 after discovering his other family in Durban, and is now living her best beachside life.
That's how Auntie Betty learned that Uncle Bunty had a whole other family in Durban, a wife and 3 sons, all real males. And how at age 81 she got her divorce from Uncle Bunty and lives very happily now in her flat overlooking the Durban beachfront and goes to America whenever she feels like it.
Page 65. You've got to love a woman who finds her wings with a pension and a passport. Sindiwe Magona's A State of Outrage is one of the few stories not driven by men behaving badly. Instead, it focuses on AIDS stigma and the cruelty of neighbors who literally drive a sick woman to death. The response? The dead woman's friends decide to fight ignorance with truth. It's fierce, communal, and timely. Then there's Night Thoughts by Monde Sifuniso, a tale that shifts the gaze toward power and politics. Here, a newly enthroned Lutunga, traditional leader of Barotseland, quickly morphs into a dictator, surrounding himself with ministers and enriching himself at the people's expense. Sound familiar? The more things change, the more they become exact clones of what they replaced. We've all seen that show. The collection closes with The Homecoming by Millie Jafta, a gentle, emotional return. A woman comes home from a life abroad to meet the daughter she hardly knows, only to discover respect, recognition, and the quiet power of forgiveness. It's a soft, dignified goodbye to an otherwise fiery collection. Now, if you hadn't guessed by now, this isn't a feel-good beach read. This is Opening Spaces, published by Heinemann's African Writers series in 1999 and edited by Zimbabwean writer Yvonne Vera, whose own life was tragically cut short by AIDS at the age of 40. Vera, an award-winning novelist and literary critic, was known for pushing boundaries, and this collection does exactly that. The problem? Around the fourth or fifth story, a pattern emerges. Bad men, broken homes, women left to pick up the pieces, and then more bad men. By story 7, you start feeling like you're reading variations of the same narrative. But just as it begins to feel too heavy or repetitive, the second half of the book redeems itself with a more diverse range of themes: political satire, cultural identity, community resilience, and even some very dry humor. Standouts like the red velvet dress and night thoughts really lift the book beyond its initial monotony, and the museum brings in much-needed nuance around diaspora identity and cultural dissonance. So what do we walk away with? Polygamy and patriarchy. Most of the stories deal with women living under cultural systems that devalue them or trap them in roles. From Mrs. N-Cube's rage to Auntie Betty's escape, the collection lays bare the quiet war women fight every day: sexual violence and silence. Several stories bravely tackle incest, rape, and sexual trauma, topics often suppressed in African societies. Identity and diaspora. The museum and the homecoming show us that being African isn't just about geography, but about memory, perception, and how we carry culture across borders. Women's agency. Almost every woman in these stories finds a way, whether by smashing a TV or simply going to America whenever she feels like it. Empowerment doesn't always roar. It sometimes sighs or strolls out the door with a suitcase. Feminism on the continent. This is African feminism in action, not imported ideology, but lived, raw, and rooted resistance. Opening Spaces isn't for the faint-hearted. It's not subtle, but it is powerful. It opens spaces in your mind, sometimes through a scream, sometimes through a whisper. If you're looking for a sharp, bold, occasionally exhausting, but necessary collection that gives voice to African women from 11 countries, this is your book. Yes, the themes do crowd around trauma and patriarchy, but that's also a reflection of real concerns on the continent. And where the stories repeat, they also resonate. If you've read this anthology, or want to, drop a comment below. Which story hit you the hardest? Which one gave you hope? And hey, if you're tired of cookie-cutter tales and want more raw, unfiltered African storytelling, subscribe, because this channel brings the continent's literature to your screen, one story at a time. See you next week. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.